So this is Marianne from Wagon Quilt Company, and we're doing block number 10, I think, this month. And this will be your borders. And the only concern that people have had, well, they may have had more, but you will get a package with your borders for 2 sides, and then next month you'll get a package with your other 2 sides for the border, but your fabric for the background doesn't come until 12. So if you'd like to switch and get number 12 or get 12 in addition to the others, would be happy to do that for you. And
how do you do these without the fabric then?
you can't really, but a lot of people are so far behind that it's not going to matter. So would be happy to pull the border fabrics. And then this fabric right here is supposed to be for your binding.
Oh.
Okay. So just some of you are really far ahead. And
So we can just go over and purchase that, or?
yes, it will be just your block for number 12.
Oh, okay.
And if you want, I mean, some people were concerned about paying for 3 at a time.
Right.
You can get them all, or you can even switch if you want and get 12 instead of the others. That's just how it's separated, so you're kind of paying
So
evenly
yeah.
through the 12
Through the
months.
12
And then
Uh-huh.
what if, because I just got this for my back, what if I don't want that binding?
Well, you can always do a different one, but this is the one that's in the kit.
So you have to pay for it.
Yeah, it will be just included in your
I think it'll look cute.
your monthly
I'm
fee.
wondering if it will, but
It looks like it from here. I think it'll be really cute. Yeah.
It's kind of a fun
I
one.
love I really like it, but I just didn't know if it clashed with this.
I think so.
And those of you who have been doing the borders, have you had any trouble? I know with mine, I actually space them out incorrectly. So if you look at my quilt compared to the one in the book, mine is actually wrong, but I don't think anybody but me and you guys will know the
Now that
difference.
you've told us.
So why did you do that? Because of just sizing somehow?
Well, I didn't take into consideration where she had put the other outer borders, and so I put them farther apart, than she did, which may not make any difference just because it's a different style than hers.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really tell you how far apart, you just put them on.
I thought she said 10 inches.
10 inches, yeah.
But is that center to center?
I didn't put mine 10,
But
I would put the one in the middle,
yeah.
Yeah.
and then the spacing
So
on the
the-
others.
So it's 31 and a half, so
Uh-huh.
just divide
I
that.
didn't care.
And
10
maybe what I
inches,
did
yeah.
is I hadn't actually trimmed it down to the correct size.
That could be too, yeah.
Because I have given you just a little bit of fudge room on those pieces that I've given you for the borders.
mine was about an inch bigger. My
Yeah,
homegrown was about an inch bigger than what she said it should have been.
Yeah, so make sure you realize that you will have
is
to
this a
trim
30
those
inches?
down.
I think this is 31.
But I just don't want you to be short.
Right.
So I did give you just a little bit extra. But if you have questions, just let me know and I'll try to figure it out for you.
Now, she told us to sew the borders on and then do them from there, but
Oh,
That would be hard.
oh, yeah.
It's just more bulky.
mm-hmm.
I think it's easier to have
I'd like
those
to be
certain
able to-
pieces
yes.
and then sew them on. Has anybody sewed theirs on?
I've sewed the top and the bottom on,
Okay,
but I did them first and then.
right. And you had to trim them down to the correct size.
Just- Yeah, just slightly.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna do 3 different stitches today, and the first one is called the tete de boeuf, and I don't know any French at all.
I'm glad you pronounced that.
So
You're saying it right.
I have no idea if it's right or wrong.
What page is it on there?
It is on page 135. And what that means in French is head of the bull. So it's supposed to look like the head of the bull and then the 2 antlers, or whatever they are. They're horns. I don't know what they are on a bull. You can do this like the fly stitch. You can do it in many directions. So it doesn't have to be just, if you're doing it like on a circle, I have done it actually around this circle right here. And I've taken the bull's head, and I should have done it in a more contrasting color, but you start with the horns of the bull and then do its head. So I've done this, I don't know if you can see it. I've done this one, and so the bull's head is inside the circle, and then the bull's head or the horns go outside. And I'm going to demonstrate one where I do it the opposite way. And maybe you can see this color a little better. So what I'm going to do on this one is just like a fly stitch. We start as if it were just a fly stitch.
I just think I saw your foot and thought, oh my God.
So I come up with my thread, and then I do a stitch length. Well, I'm doing about 1/4 of an inch apart. And then I bring my needle up right in the middle and bring my thread around. And so this would be a fly stitch, correct? Mm-hmm. We've done those before. But instead of just ending there, we make the head of the bull. And so we're essentially doing a chain stitch on the end. I don't get it caught around everything here. So I'm doing the head of the bull right there, and sinking it. If I'm doing it in a circle,
I would have never thought to do it that way, the opposite way.
then I'm doing just like a fly. And then I bring my needle into the top part of that fly so it catches it, and do a chain stitch. But you can see on circles, or you can do it in the round, or you could do it on the straight, and both would be great. But on a round thing, it kind of makes a fun little design. It's not a complex stitch if you know these other.
Oh, it's easier to do than say.
I tend to go from right to left when I'm doing a fly stitch, or this stitch, the tête bouffe. And I don't know which way is better for you.
I think I've been doing left to right.
I just find that I stitch this way, and so to go to the next stitch, it's easier to do it this way. If you were left-handed, then it may...
So left-handed or right-handed?
Don't know.
You're the ambidextrous one, right?
Sometimes I think I do either or, so maybe that's, I'm always confused. Just so everyone knows, I'm always confused.
But you figure it out.
Yes. Sometimes it takes a few false starts.
But you can see here how it looks really pretty on a circular.
Yeah, it really
That
does.
is really pretty.
And if you look closely at this one, the color's not a real contrast, but I've done it exactly the opposite way. So the bull's head is in the center, and then
Oh,
the
that's-
horns go
that's
out.
just a whole different look to it, isn't it?
And so it gives a different look. But I think that would be
What a fun
is a fun one to do, and I think you'll find that an easy one. The next stitch is the Portuguese knotted back stitch. Is that what it's called?
I think
Stem
this one I
stitch.
just ended up making up my own as I was going.
And I'm gonna have to look up the.
I can't remember, but one of them I did.
It's on
okay.
180.
There's a knot there, and I think that's.
And this is a stitch that is new in Sue Spargo's book. So if you have the old version, it doesn't have this one in it. I'm going to use a thicker thread. This is a size, is it an 8 or a 3? I can't remember what color. Oh, it's a 5.
This one.
Yeah.
It was a little hard.
So the
I
Portuguese
ended up with knots
knotted
all the way up it, so I think I did
stem
okay,
stitch.
but I'm not sure that I did it right.
You bring your thread up, And everyone knows how to do a stem stitch, don't you? So you're gonna do your stitch length forward and then come back. But when you start this Portuguese knotted stem stitch, that's really a mouthful. Usually when you're doing a back stitch, you come halfway back and then keep going forward. With this one, some of the stitchers suggest you go just a little bit farther back than halfway with the very first one. So I'm going to do a back stitch, keeping my thread on the bottom. Do you see I switched that? And then what you do next is actually not a knot. You're just wrapping.
Bind. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring my needle through right here. And wrap it around. And then I'm going to bring my needle again through and wrap it around. So you have
You're going
two,
just through the thread, right? Not through the
just
fabric.
through the thread and not through the fabric.
Oh, this isn't the one where you go through the little X.
No.
I'm thinking this is the one that go through the little X.
So keeping my thread down,
This one is tough.
I'm going to do a back stitch, right?
And touch your next.
So I usually try to go almost to the same hole or really close to the hole of that last stitch and go forward. And then I'm going to go through this top thread and this thread that is the last one I just stitched. And do one wrap, putting the needle away from you as you stitch.
So the first one is just the oddball.
It is kind of an oddball. So again, I'm going to do my back stitch, come a stitch length forward, and then back to the same place as I ended, keeping my thread down. And then I'm going to come through these two right here without catching my background. Wrap it once and wrap it twice. And sometimes you kind of have to fiddle with it. I caught my thread there. I'm going to try to take it out. I caught my background. Okay, let's do one more. Let's stitch back to that same place like we'd do a regular back stitch. And then through these two threads here, wrapping it. And then again. And what it does do is it kind of gives you a little scallop look to your stitch. Let's do one more so you kind of see that scallop. So it has kind of a wavy appearance to it. And I'm going to just do one more. Whoops, my thread's supposed to be on the bottom. Wrap it twice. So it's kind of a fun little outline stitch. I actually found the instructions in this book a little bit challenging. I watched.
Because it seems like we've done this one.
We
but I-
did do it just recently.
And that's why I say I think I ended up making my own one because it was
Yeah.
challenging to read.
Watch Mary Corbett on YouTube, and I found that her instructions were really, really good, and it helped me do my own. So you
And I
might
love
just
how
try
she uses
that.
a large thread, almost like a, what would you call it?
Well, her photography is great. My photography is very poor, but she has professionals who are working with her. But she does a really nice job at showing it, and I think that makes it a lot easier for me to do it. Okay, and the next one we're going to do is called the oyster stitch.
That one is hard for me for some
Is it?
reason.
Mine doesn't look real good.
One thing I've found with the oyster stitch is that it really doesn't look that great if you use a small thread.
Yeah.
I would use a 5 or even a 3 to do my oyster stitches. I don't know which one she's doing in the sample, but
She just used
an 8.
yeah, because it was that purpley.
They will be small and you don't really see them. It just kind of looks like a little seed, which is fine sometimes. But if you use this is a 5 that I'm using,
What's it on?
or if you use a silken pearl, I've noticed that they're really quite pretty if you do them that way. So you're going to bring your needle up,
Just a little bit. Yeah.
and the first thing you're going to do is a twisted chain. Do you remember those? I'm not going to come right next to, like if I were doing a chain stitch, I'd put it right in the same place that I came up. With the twisted chain, you're going to go just a little bit off. It gives a more twisted look to it when you do that. So I'm going to bring my needle up as if I were going to do a chain stitch. But instead of wrapping it just clockwise right here, I'm going to wrap it counterclockwise and see how it gives me that twist. So first I do a twisted chain. Kind of looks like that breast cancer thing, doesn't it? And then I'm going to take my needle and come down through the left leg of this twisted chain right here. That brings your needle back to the point where you started. And hold it, or that twisted chain kind of flops over. So I hold it with my finger so it sort of stays up there. And then what you're going to do is do a chain stitch around it. Now, in all the instructions I've seen, they do it the opposite way of how I usually wrap. I usually go clockwise, which might work. Anyway, most of the instructions do it counterclockwise. And then you're going to do a chain stitch around the twisted chain.
Yeah, you have to hold it with your thumb in place or it goes kind of ski-wonky.
And so that becomes your oyster stitch. So let's do it one more time. Don't pull it tight, yeah.
Yeah, you pull it tight and it
Pull it tight,
disappears.
then you
and
see
that's,
those two little.
yeah, and so
That's what I
you
see.
have to end up figuring out how to hold it with your thumb to keep it all in place.
So you bring your thread up and go just a little distance away from where you started. They suggest in most instructions to go just a little bit lower. And then do a twisted chain by wrapping it around counterclockwise. It's kind of like a little fish or the little breast cancer ribbon. And then you're going to bring your needle through the left hand
So you're not
leg.
going through the wool, you're just going through
I'm
the
just
thread.
going underneath the thread, which brings it back to the starting point without it kind of flopping around there. And with all these, kind of don't pull too tight and keep your finger on there as you're pulling it through. And then I'm going to do a chain stitch that basically lays around that twisted chain. and sink it. So it gives you kind of this little
Flower bud.
bud or seedy thing or whatever you would call it. Okay, and those are the 3 stitches that we're doing this time, but if you have questions about your borders, then I'd be happy to try to help you with them. We're getting towards the end. Those of you who come
So
are
is-
kind of keeping
Is the
up.
border kit the same price as